And welcome, Burner Nation, to another episode of ByrnaBros with your favorite bro, Josh, here. Today, we have such an incredible guest. Now, if you've been watching or listening to the podcast for the last several weeks, you know we've been talking a lot about the violence throughout the country, namely a lot of the political violence going on, a lot of the riots going on, the violence against law enforcement, the assassination attempts, and really kind of some of those overarching connections between those, especially, you know, when we talk about the Charlie Kirk assassination along with the attacks on ICE and some of those organizations that seemingly have had a hand in some of the, not necessarily maybe the planning, but definitely the principles driving some of these attacks. Obviously, we had Andy Ngo on last week talking about Antifa, and he had that great line that it's not a centralized organization, but it's organized. So really, we're going to continue that conversation with an amazing guest today, who was just a couple days ago in talking in the White House Antifa Roundtable, briefing the president and his staff on some of those threats that are coming down the pipe. Today, we have Seamus Bruner. He's the director of research at the Government Accountability Institute, also the author of several great books, including Control Oligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and The Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life, as well as Compromise and Fallout. He's been working with Peter Schweizer since 2011, serving with the GIA since 2013, and he's providing research support for numerous blockbuster investigations and books that we're going to talk about really quickly today. Seamus, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I'm a huge fan.
And I definitely want to show Burner Nation and let them listen to some of your testimony here in that White House Roundtable. What a pivotal moment, to really kind of bring some of this home.
Mr. President, thank you for having us here and bringing together this panel of brave journalists, everybody on this side of the room. And no one can speak to the violence better than these people here. So I think we know that this is not just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweizer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network. It's other funding networks, the Arabella funding network, the Tides funding network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hansjörg Wyss of Switzerland. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share three money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number one, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number two, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, etc. And then three, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism. These groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So one other thing, this money helps fund the decentralized crowdfunding platforms. These are ways that Antifa, the John Brown Gun Club of Elm Fork, which had links to that attack on the ICE facility, the Socialist Rifle Association, and just because they don't have LLCs or EIN numbers doesn't mean they can't get paid. Some of these funding platforms, crowdfunding platforms, are funded by this network that we call Riot Inc. So, again, I want to thank you for your leadership, for the whole cabinet's leadership on this. We're going to keep following the money and appreciate everything you're doing, sir.
Do you know the name of any of the funders? Do you know the names? Because if you do, I'd like you to give them to Cash or Pam.
Absolutely.
Or Christy.
Yeah, we'll do that.
As soon as you can. That's all of you, because you probably know the names after a certain period of time. You tend to find out. But these are people that do not have good intention for the country, and that's treasonous probably. So very important, if you could do that, it would be great. Nobody would know better than you. You'll figure it out.
Seamus, man, what's some great testimony that you were able to kind of bring, and some statements you were able to kind of bring to that roundtable, and insight that you were able to provide? You know, we've been talking with our audience about some of these connections that we've seen with Antifa and some of these other organizations, and about maybe possible foreign influence or even domestic influence. But now your specialization is following the money, as you were talking about there. You know, what have you really found, especially when it comes to Antifa most recently? How have you found that money has been really kind of driving some of those principles and then some of the activities that have been going on?
Yeah, well, money makes the entire protest industrial complex go round, what we call Riot Inc. And it's not just the foot soldiers. And of course, they need money, but they have all kinds of, like Andy No said, it is extremely organized. And there are all kinds of what they call mutual aid and mutual assistance networks. Those are people who provide shelter and food and supplies to Antifa. But also one of the things that they need is actual cash. And that comes via these platforms. We found several hard left, radical left-wing funding platforms. They work kind of like GoFundMe, but we followed the money even further than that. So Antifa, Rose City, or the John Brown Gun Club of Elm Fork, or the Socialist Rifle Association of Portland and of Chicago. These are not incorporated entities. They are decentralized in that sense. They don't have LLCs, but they've got pages on these GoFundMe-style platforms. We follow the money beyond that who builds these platforms. And we actually found it's the same people who are funding the other aspects of Riot Inc. Soros, Tide Center, the Arabella Funding Network, and so many others like it that are pouring money into every stage of the protest industrial complex, including to the bail funds. So that's one of the more smoking guns, is like, why would you be trying to get people who just assaulted law enforcement officers or set fire to cars and buildings out of jail as soon as possible? And it's because obviously they want them back on the streets for night two. And that's what's happening in these cities, is they're getting bailed out. So you can say, if you're like a Tides network or a Soros network or an Arabella network, you can kind of claim that, hey, we didn't know that there would be violence going on when we funded all of these organizations who organized the protests, provided the water bottles and all, and provided the supplies. We didn't know that violence was going to be occurring that night. And I guess, they would have a case to be made that they could say they didn't know. But once the people have been arrested for committing violence, funding the bailout projects that get them out of the jail and back on the streets quickly, you can't really feign ignorance to the fact that you're enabling chaos and unrest and violence.
Are we seeing, obviously you've talked a lot about, the domestic kind of connections with the funding and with the providing, like you said, material support to these organizations and these, and I love the term Riot Inc. That's very descriptive. But, have we seen in your research, because you're an incredible researcher, that's what you do, and have worked with some of the best people in this country doing that. Have you found traces of any kind of foreign influence? We talk about how Antifa's been named a domestic terrorist organization, but in order to really do something, we need it to be named a foreign terrorist organization. Do we have those links? Are they there?
Oh, absolutely. Big time. One of the names that I brought up at the White House and President Trump was very interested to learn more about was Neville Roy Singham. This guy is based in China. Peter Schweizer broke huge stories on Neville Roy Singham, really put him on the map. Most people had never heard of him. He was on the cover of Schweizer's last book titled BloodMoney. And Neville Roy Singham has been funding the pro-Hamas demonstrations in New York City. He funds the anti-ICE riots, or the groups behind them out in LA especially. And he's based in China and is a Marxist. He's very anti-American, and yet somehow he's allowed to interfere in our political process. And he's got this thing in New York called the People's Forum that sloshes a bunch of cash around. He also is married to Jody Evans, who's the head of Code Pink, another one of these radical groups. They were most recently in the news for basically, I mean, not physically, if not physically assaulting the president's posse when they were trying to have dinner recently. They were shouting at him, getting up in their faces. They had to be dragged out. So that's Code Pink. Neville Roy Singham, I know for a fact the feds are all over him right now. I mean, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna and House Oversight Chairman James Comer just recently sent a letter to Treasury saying that they recommend freezing and seizing Neville Roy Singham's assets for funding chaos and unrest and acting as a unregistered foreign agent for China. I believe Judge Janine Pirro, U.S. Attorney Pirro, is looking at the Foreign Agents Registration Act as it relates to Neville Roy Singham's activity. So that's one. Another guy I brought up at the White House was this Swiss billionaire, Hansjörg Wyss, W-Y-S-S. Hansjörg Wyss is been funding the Arabella outfits to the tune of tens of millions of dollars as they then turn around and use that money to fund Riot Inc. He's funded all kinds of other terrible things in this country. He's been investigated for his political giving because he has a clever way of funneling dark money into 501c4s that then help political candidates get elected. And we shouldn't be having foreign funding affecting our political process. I think everybody agrees with that.
You know, a few weeks ago, I got to interview the former director of the FBI's counterintelligence collection and fusion center. And his big point was that, you know, we know that some of these organizations, these foreign organizations, are having influence, and it's all about making that last connection to where we know and we can prove that they're providing material support, and at which point we can start taking criminal action. And man, with your work, Seamus, it sounds like we're there. It sounds like we've pretty much reached that point.
Yeah, there's a number of actions. I mean, the best would be like locking up people who are engaged in criminal activity and prosecuting to the fullest extent of the law. That'll end a lot of this real quick. But there's other tools too, and that's some of the things we talked about at the White House. I mean, there's the IRS has a lot of tools. The Treasury Department has a lot of tools. Revoking the tax exempt statuses of so-called nonprofits that fund criminal activity. The IRS can do that. But yeah, the FBI and DOJ are going to be key on this. And I was just very encouraged to see, I mean, Secretary Bessent of Treasury is locked in on this. Kash Patel is locked in on this. The whole administration is taking this seriously.
You know, I always like to leave, and I know we're kind of limited on time. I always like to leave, the Burner Nation out there with some homework for one, but two is kind of a call to action. You know, obviously with all of your research that you've been doing, the average citizen out there, what should they, one, know? And two, what can they do to either learn more about what's going on, educate themselves, or to actually take some action, you know, to help, you know, kind of support these investigations and support this action against some of these, you know, radical terrorist organizations.
Oh, I love that, Josh. Thank you. Because it's all hands on deck. So if you've got spare time and you want to be a citizen journalist, I mean, you can tag me on Twitter, direct DM me anything you find. All of the stuff we do is open source. I mean, like, it's open source intelligence gathering. There's so much information out there, and it's so hard to process it. I mean, we've got a pretty small, humble team here. So we dig through the 990s, but there's tools that really help you do that. I mean, ProPublica, it's a lefty outfit, but I'll give them a shout out anyway. They've got the Nonprofit Explorer. So it's ProPublica's got this thing that can help you search through the documents of all of these big funding networks. And if you find, that you've got, we've done the easy terms like Antifa and stuff, but you can find, these groups as you watch the videos. They pop up like daisies. That we didn't know much about the John Brown Gun Club of Elm Fork, and then we start seeing that they're involved in these attacks on ICE facilities. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, there were these flyers that popped up that said, "Hey, fascist, catch! Join the John Brown Gun Club," because we're the only group that doesn't shy away from celebrating when Nazis get killed. I mean, they're really sick people here. Just send the information you can find. We'll go through it. We'll vet it. But I appreciate that. It is an all hands on deck moment.
I love it. We always talk about how, out there you are your own first responder, and you have to take responsibility and accountability for the safety of yourself, your family, your community, your nation. And this is a prime example of exactly how you can help without actually even leaving your house. So, Seamus, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to talk more with you and about following this money and this trail. It's clearly leading us somewhere. Burner Nation, go out and Seamus, where can they find you on the socials?
Yeah, I'm at Seamus Bruner on every social, SeamusBruner. That's every platform. I'm mostly on Twitter, but I guess I do have an Instagram that gets posted to occasionally. And you can get the book Control Oligarchs, which maps out all these money flows at controloligarchsbook.com. It's the word control and the word oligarchs put together, book.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I found it earlier and already downloaded the audiobook so I can listen to it this week, and I'm super excited to learn more. Burner Nation, go out, read those books, educate yourself, keep reading, keep learning, and join us on the next episode of ByrnaBros.